Somewhere deep inside, you're weary of the noise. Not just the sounds around you, but the relentless pressure within, the racing pulse, the unending effort to prove worth, to survive under volumes that no longer reflect your inner landscape. You've been strong for so long, you've forgotten how to breathe in peace. One more push doesn't feel like bravery. It feels like exhaustion stretched thin. And the world, it applauds clamor. It equates worth with volume, but your soul is whispering a different truth. What if this isn't the moment to be seen, but to be quiet? What if God invites you not to rise louder, but to surrender deeper? To let go of noisy striving, to rest in something silent, even now. Maybe you were never meant to keep fighting like this. Maybe the chaos isn't your stage, it's your signal to step aside, to let someone else carry the weight you never were meant to bear alone. You don't have to perform peace. You can receive it here, now. Because the truth is, there's a hiding place. Not a retreat, but a holy covering. A quiet refuge where your value is not measured by what you hold, but by who holds you. This is not giving up. It's letting go of burdens never meant to be yours. Take a breath here. This moment found you, not by mistake. It's sacred. So pause, stay, because in the stillness there is presence. It didn't make sense at first. The door closed. The call went quiet. That path you trusted slipped away. You wondered, did I lose favor? Did I miss the voice? Was I too small? Or had he stopped caring? But what if the silence isn't from neglect, but mercy in disguise? What if the turning point wasn't a failure, but a divine redirection? Sometimes when the world shakes, we assume we've failed. But the Spirit whispers, you were pulled aside, because the path ahead wasn't safe for your soul. That moment might have felt like exile, like a door closed in your face. But sacredly, it was protection. Someone else's timeline doesn't define yours. Someone else's pace isn't your calling. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are exactly where you were meant to pause. Held in the tension of waiting, because you are being made safe before being made known. Let those words settle. You are being guarded, not governed, prepared, not passed over. If that lands with your soul, if this quiet sanctuary is where your heart breathes deeper, you're not alone here. Stay with us at Calm, Called. This space honors the unseen. We see you. We're rooted here, with you. Subscribe, and let this become your quiet home. It's safe now to confess that hidden doesn't always feel sacred. It often feels silent, lonely, weighty. You pray and hear nothing. You show up, but no one notices. You wait on what feels like an invisible signal. And the waiting stretches like a horizon you can't reach. You might wonder, did God leave? Did I misstep? Or am I simply forgotten? But beloved, silence is not absence. It can be the first sound of sacred nearness, a hush that holds you, that invites your soul to hear its own echo. What looks like emptiness is often sacred space, a hidden sanctuary beneath all the noise, a secret soil where your spirit is being broken, only to give rise to what's yet unseen. This silence is full of breath, of unseen pulses of presence. You're not being forgotten, you're being formed. There's a shift ahead, a soft awakening in the heart of the quiet. This is not the absence of voice. It's the preparation of a promise. Listen, not for an answer you can hear now, but for a stirring you cannot ignore. Something is being born beneath the hush. You are not alone. You are held. Within the silence lies sacred promise. And soon, that promise will speak. We live in a world addicted to movement, to plans, to urgency, to visible proof that something is happening. But God often works in the opposite rhythm. Where the world demands motion, He invites stillness. Where culture celebrates acceleration, heaven calls for rest. Before every great release, there is always a holy pause. Think of the stories we hold sacred. Moses spent 40 years in obscurity before confronting Pharaoh. David was anointed king, then returned to the fields. Jesus himself vanished into silence for 30 years, before one voice split the skies and said, "This is my beloved Son." Stillness has always been God's preparation ground, not a pause, a positioning, not a delay, a design. When everything outside feels chaotic, when everyone else seems to be building, pushing, growing, and you're just still, you might think you've been forgotten, but heaven hasn't missed a thing. Stillness is not the absence of purpose. It's the womb where purpose matures, where noise is stripped away, where identity is restored, where calling is confirmed, not just announced. You're not failing because you're not moving. You're not behind because you're not visible. Stillness is doing more in you than any spotlight ever could. This moment, this quiet stretch, isn't passive. It's divine strategy. Because when God sends you, He doesn't send you halfway healed. He sends you whole, rooted, rested, resilient from the inside out. So if it feels like you're standing still while the world rushes past, take heart. You're not being bypassed. You're being prepared. Because when God moves, He moves with power. And when He sends, it's never too early and never too late. It's hard to admit it, but sometimes we think resistance means we did something wrong. The plans fell through. The door slammed shut. The conversation that was supposed to change everything went silent. And we wonder, was I not praying enough? Did I miss God's voice? But what if the resistance was holy? What if the storm wasn't meant to destroy you, but to pause you? Sometimes the no is mercy. Sometimes the delay is rescue. Not all movement is forward, and not all closed paths are losses. They're detours written by a God who sees what the next bend would have cost you. There are storms that come to refine, and there are storms that come to redirect. Imagine trying to walk through a forest just after a lightning strike. Trees falling, smoke rising, no visibility ahead. You might want to push through, but what you need is to be stopped, covered, held back from a path that's not safe yet. This season might be that forest. This resistance might be the very hand of God, not stopping your purpose, but shielding your soul. Because He's not just after your success. He's after your survival, your healing, your restoration. And if a storm is what keeps you from walking into something too soon, then that storm becomes a gift. We don't always recognize the grace in being blocked. It doesn't feel spiritual. It doesn't look divine. But heaven works in hidden ways. And sometimes the most loving thing God can do is say, "Not this way, not yet." So what if this resistance isn't a wall, but a door being built in secret? What if this storm is how God holds you back until He can safely bring you forward? You're not stuck. You're being shielded, and soon the clouds will part. We've been taught to fear delay, to see it as punishment, a sign of failure, a loss of favor. But heaven doesn't measure time the way we do. What feels like stuck to us often looks like strategy in the eyes of God. There is a kind of delay that isn't cruel, it's sacred, not empty. not wasted, but choreographed down to the second by a Father who knows both the weight of your longing and the exact moment you're ready to carry the answer. Think of a lantern being filled before it's lit. You wouldn't light it while it's still empty. It would burn out too fast. So God fills first. He strengthens first. He lets the oil settle before the flame comes. That's what sacred delay looks like. Not God holding back because he's uncertain, but because he's precise. When he moves, it's never rushed, never scattered, and never out of sync with what your spirit can actually hold. Sacred delay protects you from being launched into moments you're not yet ready to sustain. It's the mercy of timing, meeting the depth of preparation. You may think, I should be further along by now. But what if heaven is saying, you're right on time, I'm just not finished preparing the room you're meant to walk into. Even now, things are aligning behind the veil, conversations you haven't heard, people you haven't met, resources you haven't imagined, all being drawn together in divine rhythm, not so you can rush, but so you can arrive whole. Delay doesn't mean denial, it means orchestration. Every step, every silence, every slow moment, they all carry purpose. So no, this isn't delay, it's sacred delay, and when the door opens, you'll look back and see it clearly. God was never late. He was building something too beautiful to rush. We often think of safety as a place we have to reach, something ahead of us. After the struggle ends, after the breakthrough comes, once the chaos is over. But what if safety isn't something you move toward? What if it's something that's already wrapped around you? We miss it sometimes, because safety doesn't always feel like comfort. It doesn't always come with answers, open doors, or instant relief. Sometimes it comes as a pause, a shelter so still, it makes us doubt its strength. But it's real, and it's enough. Imagine a traveler in a storm. They find a small cabin off the path. Dim, quiet, unassuming. It doesn't look like victory. But inside, there's warmth, there's shelter, there's a hand steadying the door from the inside, keeping the wind from breaking through. That's you. That's where you are now. Not cast aside, not wandering, but held, protected in ways you can't see yet. You've been waiting for peace to arrive, but maybe peace is already here. You just didn't recognize it because it didn't look like resolution. It looked like stillness, like your strength finally being allowed to rest. God's hiding place isn't always dramatic. Often, it's soft, quiet, unseen, but it's under His wings that your soul finds refuge, even when your mind doesn't understand the path. What if the safety you've been begging for is the exact space you've been standing in right now? What if God has already placed a covering over you, not to isolate you, but to insulate you? You are safer than you feel, more covered than you know, not because of circumstances, but because of presence, and presence does not fail. It's easy to trust timing when things fall into place, when prayers are answered quickly, when doors swing open just as you arrive. But what about the times when heaven feels late, when the clock ticks louder than God speaks? When it seems like everyone else is moving forward, and you're still standing still? Those are the moments that test the soul, not because God is absent, but because He's precise, and divine timing doesn't follow human urgency. Look back. How many times did you think the moment was lost, only to realize later that it was right on time? How many times did you fear the door was gone, only to watch God open one no human could have planned? Heaven has a rhythm, a cadence that moves with restoration in mind, not just results. You're not just being positioned, you're being healed. And healing can't be rushed. A seed doesn't break the surface the moment it's planted. It rests beneath, unseen, becoming what it was created to be before anyone else can see it. That's where you are, in that sacred, unseen becoming, and heaven is not late. It's aligning, it's perfecting what concerns you, even when the evidence feels thin. You don't have to understand the timing to trust it. You just have to remember who holds the clock. So breathe, not because everything makes sense yet, but because history with God has shown this. He has never failed to come through. Not once. Not ever. Some days, staying feels harder than leaving. You look around and think, maybe I'm not meant to be here anymore. Maybe if you moved, something would change. At least movement feels like progress. But what if the most faithful thing you could do right now is stay? What if trust doesn't look like action, but stillness? What if it looks like not running from the ache, but resting in the middle of it? We often associate trust with the big leaps, changing cities, launching projects, stepping into the unknown. And yes, those can be acts of faith, but so can staying planted when every emotion screams for escape. Sometimes faith is not fixing, not forcing, not fleeing. It's sitting in the tension and letting God be God. Imagine a harbor during a storm. The ship doesn't sail out into the chaos to prove it's seaworthy. It anchors. It stays close to the shore, not because it's weak, but because it's wise. It knows there is safety in stillness. That's the kind of trust heaven honors, the kind that stays rooted even when your feelings sway, the kind that whispers, I don't see the outcome, but I know the one who does. You're not weak for staying. You're brave for believing that God's presence is enough, even here, even now. Staying doesn't mean settling. It means surrendering, letting God do the deep work beneath the surface, work that can't happen while you're always in motion. This season is not about proving your strength. It's about trusting His. So yes, you could leave, you could run, you could grasp for control, but what if the miracle happens because you didn't? What if the breakthrough was written into your staying still? Memory has a way of saving us, not just the mind, but the soul's memory. Those deep places that remember what your mind may forget, like how it felt to be carried. You've been here before, maybe not in these exact circumstances, but in moments that felt just as uncertain, just as stretched, just as silent. And yet, you're still here. Not because you figured everything out, but because someone lifted you when you couldn't lift yourself. That wasn't luck. That wasn't coincidence. That was God. Can you remember it now? The provision that showed up the day you thought you had nothing left? The unexpected kindness that caught you just before the fall? The peace that didn't make sense, but held you like a blanket in the dark? That was Him. You didn't see the hands, but you felt the rescue. You didn't hear the voice, but you knew the presence. This isn't the first time you felt unsure, and it won't be the last. But that same unseen grace that carried you then is here again. Sometimes we need to look back in order to move forward, not to dwell, but to anchor, to remind our weary hearts that God didn't leave us last time, and He won't start now. You are not being asked to summon strength from nowhere. You're being invited to remember, to let your memory preach louder than your fear, to let the history of His faithfulness be the wind beneath this waiting. He carried you before, He will carry you again, and this time, you'll feel the embrace even more clearly, because now you know what it means to trust what you cannot see. This is where it all begins to make sense, not because the circumstances have changed, but because you have. You see it now, don't you? You weren't stuck. You were being still. You weren't passed over. You were being protected. And what felt like delay was divine positioning all along. God wasn't ignoring you. He was insulating you, shielding you from what your spirit wasn't meant to carry. Not yet. Because here's the truth. Those who are hidden are not forgotten. They are being prepared, and preparation always takes place in secret. The womb, the wilderness, the waiting room, each one sacred, each one necessary, each one covered by a God who never stops working even in the quiet. You thought you were stuck because you couldn't move forward, but God was anchoring you, rooting you deeper than you've ever gone, so that when the wind comes, you won't be shaken. This is the shift, the revelation. You are not behind. You are becoming, not because you kept striving, but because you finally surrendered. And in that surrender, God did what only He can. He turned the delay into direction, the silence into strategy, the hiding into holy preparation. So breathe deeper now, not because the journey is over, but because the light is beginning to break through, and you can feel it. The covering wasn't a cage, it was a cocoon, and what emerges from this will be radiant, resilient, ready. Let's pause now, not to conclude, but to surrender, to lay down the pressure to figure it all out, and to simply be held. This is a prayer for the hidden ones, the ones who feel invisible, the ones who've obeyed in silence, endured without applause, and waited without knowing what they were waiting for. You've been faithful, even when it didn't feel fruitful. You've stayed when it would have been easier to flee. You've whispered yes in rooms no one saw. And now, this prayer is for you. God of the unseen places, thank you for being near in the quiet, for covering us when we didn't even know we needed covering, for not rushing us through the wilderness, but walking with us inside it. Thank you for preparing in secret what will one day be revealed in glory, for the moments we mistook as abandonment that were actually moments of divine embrace, for the shelter you provide that no one else sees, but we can feel. Teach us to trust your timing even when it stretches beyond our understanding. Remind us that hidden doesn't mean forgotten, that stillness is not a void, but a holy space where heaven meets us in still waters. We don't ask for the storm to vanish instantly, but for eyes to see the refuge already around us, for hearts that recognize your whisper, even when it doesn't come with a sign, for souls that rest, even before the answer comes. You've carried us before, you'll carry us again, so we let go, not into emptiness, but into you. And now, if this whisper has met you in the in-between, if something inside you feels a little less alone, if a new breath has entered the silence, you're not meant to walk this alone. This space, calm, called, was created for souls like yours, hidden, but not hopeless, waiting, but not forgotten. Subscribe now, and stay close, so when the next whisper of peace comes, it finds you ready to receive it. We'll be here, in the quiet, still hidden, still held,